I wasn't expecting to be invited, but I didn't expect to be insulted in print either. The envelope came in the mail on a rainy Thursday afternoon. It was glossy pale cream with gold cursive writing and a tiny bow like something out of a bridal magazine. My hands were damp from washing dishes, and I almost didn't open it. But Caleb, standing behind me in his worn Spider-Man pajamas, was already asking, "Is it something fun, Mom?" It wasn't fun. It was an invitation to Ms. Rachel Moore. Rachel, with an A in the wrong place. I stared at it, blinked and read it again. Not only was my name spelled wrong, there was no note, no. Can't wait to see you. No. You've always been part of this family, just a date, a location and the names. Madison Moore and Blake Harrison in looping script. I sat down at the kitchen table, heart beating slower than usual, heavy somehow. Caleb climbed up into the seat across from me and peered at the card. Aunt Maddie's getting married. I nodded slowly. Cool. Are we going? The way his eyes lit up wide, innocent, hopeful, was the only reason I didn't throw the damn thing in the trash. I hadn't spoken to Madison in over a year. Our last exchange had been cold, clipped and on speakerphone while she was on her way to yoga. She didn't ask how Caleb was doing. She never did. She hadn't visited since Caleb was 5. Our mother Donna made excuses for her. She's busy, honey. You know how careers are. But we all knew the truth. I was the shame, the black sheep. The one who had a child out of wedlock and worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Dayton, Ohio. Meanwhile, Madison was the marketing director at some glossy tech startup with engagement photos taken in Napa and a golden retriever named Bentley. Still, something in Caleb's face made my throat tighten. He didn't remember the whispers behind closed doors. He didn't remember how Donna refused to come to the hospital when he was born, or how she'd told me over the phone, "This isn't what we hoped for you." He only remembered the good things, Aunt Maddie giving him a toy truck for Christmas when he was 4. Grandma Donna baking sugar cookies once when we still got invited to Thanksgiving. He remembered love, because that's all I ever let him keep. And now he was bouncing in his seat. Do I get to wear a tie? Can we get one with dinosaurs? I looked at the invitation again. No mention of me bringing a +1. No mention of Caleb at all. I imagined the RSVP box, will attend, will not attend. There was no line that read, we'll pretend this is normal. I didn't answer him right away. That night I stood in the bathroom after Caleb went to bed, brushing my hair and looking at the lines around my eyes. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. I pulled the invitation from the counter and read it again under the fluorescent light. I didn't want to go, God, I really didn't. But I remembered what it was like to be left out as a kid. To be the one no one thought to include. And Caleb, he was 8. He still believed in family. I wasn't ready to take that belief from him, not yet. So I bought a navy blue dress from a second-hand shop 3 towns over. I spent 30 minutes removing someone else's name from the dry cleaning tag. I let Caleb pick out a clip-on tie with tiny stars on it. Because the dinosaur one didn't match his white button-up, and he said stars made him feel big and important. I curled my hair the morning of the wedding using a 14-hour iron I'd gotten on clearance 2 years ago. Caleb watched from the doorway, swinging his feet. You look like a princess, Mom. My chest ached. Not because of the compliment, but because part of me wanted to believe it. Like maybe for one day, we could blend in. The venue was about 40 minutes away. A fancy vineyard resort with white columns and perfectly manicured lawns. I followed the line of luxury cars to the valet area, gripping the wheel of my 15-year-old Toyota like it might fall apart from embarrassment. I parked further away, near the overflow gravel lot. The hem of my dress dragged in the dust as I helped Caleb out of the back seat. He looked up at the building like it was a castle. I looked at it like a battlefield. As we walked into the reception hall, no one greeted us. A woman with a headset handed me a program without looking at my face. Another usher handed me a table card. Table 9. I glanced at it, no last name. Just a number, I gave Caleb a smile I didn't feel and followed the signs toward the reception. Inside the room was lit with golden chandeliers and soft music. It smelled like roses and money. People were already seated at round tables draped in ivory cloth, glasses sparkling with champagne. Madison stood near the head table, glowing in her wedding dress, laughing at something a man in a tux had said. Her hair was curled into perfect waves, her makeup flawless. She hadn't aged a day since college. She glanced in my direction. Her eyes met mine, then skimmed right past me. Not even a nod. I looked down at my place card again, table 9. We walked across the room, past the cousins I hadn't seen since Caleb was a baby, past the former family friends who used to ask how I was before they stopped trying, past Donna, who sat prim and proper at a table near the center, holding a champagne glass like royalty she didn't weigh. Finally, we reached table 9. It was next to the restroom, literally next to them. I stood there for a moment, blinking. There was a faint hum from the air vent. A whiff of air freshener and industrial soap drifted from the restroom door. The music from the main room felt muffled here. Like we were sitting behind a curtain no one wanted to look behind. The tablecloth was the same as the others, the chairs just as cushioned. But it was clear this was where the afterthoughts sat. Caleb plopped into his seat cheerfully. "We're by the bathrooms? That's awesome. I can go fast if I have to pee." I laughed, but it cracked a little on the way out. I sat down across from him and smoothed the napkin across my lap. He looked around, eyes wide. "It's so fancy." "Yeah," I said softly, "it is." I glanced back toward the center of the room. Madison was giving a toast, now standing beside her new husband. Everyone was clinking glasses, smiling, laughing. My invitation had been misspelled. My table was next to the toilets. My son thought we were part of something. I leaned closer to him and said mostly to myself, "Just where they think we belong." But I was here. I had shown up. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something more than they expected. Some families put you at the head table, others put you next to the hand dryers. The string quartet played something delicate and expensive, the kind of music that sounded like it belonged in a perfume commercial. Caleb tapped the edge of his water glass, with the tip of his fork wide-eyed and grinning. "Do you think the chandelier has real diamonds?" he asked. I looked up. It was enormous tiers of gold and glass and dangling crystals that sparkled in the evening light. "Not diamonds," I said softly, "but close enough." He nodded like he believed me. From where we sat at table 9, I could see the whole room, rows of laughing guests in dresses that shimmered and tuxedos that looked custom-tailored. There were towering vases of white orchids, a gold-trimmed wedding cake that looked like a sculpture, and servers walking gracefully with flutes of champagne balanced on silver trays. And then there was us, me in my second-hand dress, Caleb in his too-big jacket with a star-patterned tie sitting by the bathroom doors. People passed our table quickly, glancing over us like we were furniture. A few smiled politely before moving on, not really seeing us at all. Madison appeared about 10 minutes later, sweeping across the floor like a movie star. Her dress was a silken cloud, perfect and custom-fitted. She paused beside a group of guests, laughing delicately, resting her hand on someone's shoulder as if she'd been trained in pageantry. Then she saw me. Her smile flickered just for a second, then reappeared smaller, tighter. "You made it," she said as if surprised. I stood up. "Hi, Madi." She gave a glance toward Caleb, nodded slightly, and turned back toward the center of the room before I could say more. "No hug. No. You look beautiful." Just the obligatory greeting and an escape route. Caleb looked up at me. "She looks like a princess." I forced a smile. "She does." Then Donna appeared. My mother hair perfectly styled. Lips painted a glossy nude, wearing a pearl necklace I recognized from childhood, but hadn't seen in years. It was the necklace she once promised me when I turned 30. I suppose promises expire when your daughter becomes an inconvenience. She didn't speak to me. She walked right past our table like I was another guest's plus one she didn't recognize. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. 10 minutes later, the whispers started. "She's still single. No ring. Just that little boy. Poor thing must be exhausting. She works front desk at a motel, I heard. I'm surprised she even showed up. I kept my head down. I cut Caleb's chicken into small pieces, wiped chocolate mousse from the corner of his mouth. I tried to stay focused on him, but the voices found their way in soft, sharp-edged, like razors hidden in cotton. One woman approached our table, an aunt I hadn't seen in years. She leaned in with a brittle smile. "Rachel, it's been so long. You look healthy." Healthy, that rat word again, the polite cousin of "you've gained weight." And this must be. "Caleb," I said quickly. "He's 8. She tilted her head. "Oh, 8 already? And you're still managing things on your own." I smiled tightly. "We're doing just fine." She nodded, eyes scanning the room, like she was already looking for someone more important. Caleb leaned in after she walked away. "Why do people look at you like that?" I froze. "Like what, sweetheart?" "Like you're not supposed to be here." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Maybe they just don't remember how lucky they are." He tilted his head, confused. I didn't explain I couldn't. But the way he looked at me, the furrow in his little brow, the way his small hand reached for mine under the table, it made something in my chest shift. For a second, I couldn't breathe. And that was the moment I realized I hadn't come here looking for forgiveness. I didn't need them to like me. I had shown up because I still hoped they'd see Caleb, that they'd see him. But instead, they gave him a front row seat to quiet cruelty, and he was starting to notice. The music stopped. The clinking of glasses slowed. Someone tapped a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're now moving into the speeches portion of the evening," announced a groomsman. "And first up, our beautiful bride, Madison Moore." Applause rippled through the room. Caleb clapped enthusiastically. I smiled at him, though my chest had tightened again. I didn't know why, but something in me braced. Madison stepped forward, radiant in the spotlight. She took the mic with a practiced grin, the kind of confidence only someone adored her whole life could carry without effort. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began. "It means the world to us, truly. And we're just so excited to celebrate with all of you." More applause. "And before I talk about my incredible new husband," she turned toward Blake, who smiled adoringly from the head table, "I want to take a moment to recognize someone else very special in my life." She paused. My heart skipped. I looked down at my plate, then back up. She turned toward the crowd, my sister. Caleb perked up. "That's you, Mom." My cheeks flushed. I sat up straighter. Madison smiled out at the room, voice. "Sweet Rachel is resilient." A few heads turned. People glanced toward me, eyebrows raised. "She's been through a lot." Madison continued, her voice growing theatrical. "Raising a child alone, working 2 jobs. She's a real example of how sometimes mistakes can still become something meaningful." A ripple of awkward laughter. My stomach turned. I mean, not everyone gets to find love the first time around, or the second. She added, chuckling, "But Rachel has shown us that you don't need a husband to survive." More laughter. The room was laughing. My son was watching. I looked at Caleb. His smile had faded. Madison still smiled like she was delivering a toast at a gala. "And honestly," she said, lifting her glass, "I think we all admire how she keeps showing up. Even when it's clear she doesn't belong." I couldn't breathe. The clinking of glasses was louder now. The laughter was sharper, and I sat there, frozen napkin balled in my fist. Caleb whispered, "Why is she saying that?" I couldn't answer. I just kept staring at Madison, who beamed as though she'd just delivered the kindest speech in history. "Rachel is resilient." Resilient. The word you use when someone survives what you'd never want to endure yourself, and you don't want to help. I felt every pair of eyes on me. Some amused, some uncomfortable, but none kind. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that the next chapter of this night, whatever came next, would change everything. The music had faded to a gentle hum. The clinking of silverware slowed. The wine glasses were being topped off. Caleb leaned against me, chocolate still smudged at the corner of his mouth. His eyes were wide with excitement, unaware of the silence crawling toward us. From the head table, Madison stood shimmering under the golden lights. Her white dress fit her like it had been sewn onto her body, sparkling flawless loud. She held her champagne flute delicately, like a queen raising a decree, her smile radiant and rehearsed. "I just want to say a few words." She began, her voice clear and sweet like honey over ice. The room hushed. Phones lifted, smiles froze. I exhaled slowly and sat up straighter. I didn't expect much. I hadn't expected to be mentioned at all. But maybe, just maybe, this was her attempt to extend something resembling grace. "Thank you all for being here," Madison continued. "Tonight means everything to me in Callum, surrounded by friends, family, and yes, even the black sheep among us. Some laughter." I flinched, unsure if I'd heard right. Caleb looked up at me with a curious smile. Madison giggled lightly. Now I can't give a speech without mentioning my sister, Rachel. After all, she did come tonight, and she even brought her little boy, Caleb. "Sweetie, you look adorable." Caleb beamed and waved. The room chuckles. And Rachel, Madison said, turning toward me just slightly, "You've always been such a strong role model, a single mother, brave, independent, clearly unwanted by anyone else, but still pushing through. That's what courage looks like, right?" The crowd laughed. Not politely, loudly. Wine glasses were raised. A few guests whistled. My stomach dropped. I blinked once, twice. Was she serious? And hey, Madison went on the microphone, catching every syllable like it was gospel. "At least someone is doing the hard work of showing us what resilience really looks like, raising a kid alone. That's commitment or desperation. It's hard to tell sometime." More laughter. Caleb's hand slid into mine. "Mom," he whispered, "why are they laughing at you?" Before I could answer, I heard another voice, this one sharper, older. "Donna. She's a used product, but still polishes up well." She called from her seat, grinning. The room erupted. It was no longer laughter. It was mockery, sharp, jagged, hot. My face burned. I felt myself freeze, not from confusion, but from restraint. The kind of stillness you learn when you've survived years of being someone's punching bag. When walking away quietly becomes second nature. Caleb's face fell. His brows furrowed. I wanted to get up. I wanted to grab him and leave. I wanted to run. But then I looked at him. At my son. His wide, confused eyes staring up at me, trying to understand why everyone was laughing at his mother. The woman who made his lunches taught him to read. Stayed up late to hold him when he had nightmares. He didn't understand. And that was the moment everything inside me shifted. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was his first lesson in dignity, in cruelty, in standing tall, in rooms that try to make you small. I tightened my grip on his hand. My voice stayed trapped in my throat, but my back straightened. I would not cry. Not here. Not now. Madison raised her glass one final time. "To resilience," she said with that perfect pageant smile. "May we never need it as much as some people clearly do." Silence followed her toast like a slap after a smile. I could feel every heartbeat in my fingertips. Caleb leaned in closer. "Are you okay, Mom?" he whispered. I nodded barely. "I'm okay." But I wasn't not yet. And then a sound sliced through the hush. Wood scraping against tile. A sharp drag of a chair pulled back, abrupt and loud. All eyes turned. Callum, the groom. He stood slowly, not rushing, not smiling, his face unreadable. He didn't look at Madison. He didn't look at the guests. He looked at me. My heart stumbled in my chest. He took a breath, hands steady, and then he stepped away from the table. Callum stood up. His chair scraped sharply against the marble floor. A small sound, yet it sliced through the silence left in the wake of all that laughter. Rachel froze. She didn't know what was coming next. A joke, a smooth save, or worse, agreement. But Callum didn't look at Madison. He didn't look at Donna either. His eyes locked on Rachel. The woman seated at the far edge of the room. The woman they all preferred to forget. And in that gaze was something steady. Not pity, not curiosity. Recognition. Caleb still held her hand, confused, whispering, Can we go home now? Rachel didn't get the chance to respond. I'm sorry to interrupt, Callum, said his voice calm and level, but some things don't deserve silence. The room stilled. Madison stiffened her posture, faltering for the first time that evening. Donna blinked. Guests slowly lowered their champagne glasses. The air grew heavy. Callum turned to face the crowd fully. His tone never rose, but each word hit with purpose. I've heard a lot about family while planning this wedding, he began. About appearances, about tradition, about keeping things pleasant for the guests. But what just happened? That wasn't family. That was cruelty packaged with a bow and passed around like dessert. Rachel's breath caught. Her palms were damp, but she didn't shrink. She didn't cry. She held her son's hand tighter, and in return, Caleb's grip tightened too. Callum shifted his gaze to Madison. She was pale, her mouth opening slightly, but no words came. You mocked your sister, he said evenly. A single mother, a woman who raised her son on her own without complaint. And worse, you made her son watch you do it. Several people gasped. One older relative turned to whisper to another. No one laughed now. Callum stepped away from the head table and walked slowly, methodically toward the back of the room, toward them. Rachel's heart pounded, but she didn't look away. He knelt beside Caleb and said softly, Your mom is the strongest person in this room. Don't ever forget that. Caleb blinked at him, eyes wide, then he nodded, small but sure. Callum straightened, then addressed the room once more. She didn't ask for this. She didn't expect applause. She came here, brought her son, smiled, supported the day, and she got turned into a punchline. If this is what it means to join this family, I need to rethink the kind of man I want to be. He placed the microphone gently on the nearby table, and then without another word, he walked out. No music, no applause, just stunned silence. No one followed it. Rachel sat still, stunned, until Caleb tugged on her hand. Again. Mom, did he just stand up for you? She nodded slowly. Her voice couldn't make it past the tightness in her throat, but her eyes remained dry. Not because the moment didn't warrant tears, but because for once, she didn't need to cry to be seen. A few murmurs stirred near the front. Donna's voice rang out sharp and rattled. What an ungrateful man. He humiliated the whole family. Just like your sister. Selfish and dramatic. But it didn't carry the same power it once did. Her voice fell into the quiet like a pebble into deep water ripples, but no wave. Rachel rose to her feet. She didn't look at Madison. She didn't answer her mother. She just held Caleb's hand and took the first step toward the exit. People shifted as she passed. Some lowered their heads. Others tried to meet her gaze and offer a silent apology. They were too afraid to voice early. At the door, she heard her name. Rachel. She turned. It was her grandfather, Norman. He stood slowly from his seat, his eyes glassy. I should have said something years ago, he said, voice cracking. She gave him a single soft nod. She wasn't angry, not at him, not anymore. She had no room left for that. Outside, the air was crisp and cold. Caleb looked up. Is the wedding over? Rachel gave a quiet smile. I think it ended the moment someone told the truth. They walked toward the car. Rachel didn't look back, and as the lights from the reception faded behind them, she whispered a single thought to herself. Some toasts celebrate, others expose. He was supposed to marry into the family, but first he dismantled it. The ballroom fell into a silence so sharp it nearly buzzed. Callum rose from his seat, slowly pushing the chair back with a scrape that echoed like a thunderclap. The string quartet stopped mid-measure. Forks hovered over plates. All attention swung toward the groom, who now stood still, tall and unreadable at the head table. Madison's smile faltered, still frozen in place from her punchline. She blinked, confused, glancing from Callum to the guests, her polished composure beginning to crack. Donna leaned forward slightly, her face pulled taut in annoyance, not fear yet. She had no idea what was coming. I didn't dare move. Caleb's small hand gripped mine tightly under the table. He leaned into me, his eyes wide, unsure if something bad or good was about to happen. Honestly, I wasn't sure either. Callum stepped toward the microphone. His movements were deliberate, not rushed as if each footstep was dragging a truth. He'd held back for too long. He didn't look at Madison. He didn't look at her mother. He looked straight at me. His voice, when it finally came, was calm, but carried the weight of stone. "I wasn't planning to speak," he began, tone steady. "But I also wasn't planning to stay silent after what I just witnessed." Madison sat frozen, her fingers clenched around her champagne flute. Callum paused, letting the air stretch. No one whispered. No one moved. "What we just saw wasn't a joke," he continued. "It wasn't lighthearted. It wasn't family, teasing family. It was cruelty dressed up in silk and high heels." A low murmur rippled at the back of the room, quickly silenced by his next words. "I've heard a lot about this family in the past 2 years. Traditions, expectations, appearances, and I've tried. God knows, I've tried to believe that love lived under all that polish. But what I saw tonight was a room that laughed when a woman was humiliated in front of her son." His voice didn't waver. He wasn't yelling. He didn't need to. Every syllable landed like a hammer on porcelain. "I don't know what kind of family laughs at a mother working 2 jobs to raise her child. I don't know what kind of mother joins in mocking her own daughter. But I do know one thing. If this is what I'm marrying into, I need to think again." A gasp, not dramatic, just a breath stolen from the room. Donna's hand flew to her chest. Madison stood now, eyes pleading, her voice caught somewhere in her throat. "Callum," she started, but he held up one hand and silenced her. "Rachel," he said, turning fully toward me. "You didn't ask for sympathy. You didn't ask for attention. You didn't fight back, but you didn't need to." Then he looked at Caleb, his gaze softening. "You have a mom who shows up. A mom who stays standing even when people try to knock her down. That's more than most kids get. And anyone who doesn't see that doesn't deserve to sit at her table." He set the microphone down. Not dropped, not thrown. Just released gently like it had said. Everything it needed to. Then he turned. And without a single look back at Madison, he walked down the center aisle of the ballroom, alone. No music played. No one clapped. The room was stunned into a breathless quiet. I stood still, clutching Caleb's hand. He looked up at me, confused, hopeful, amazed. His little voice whispered, "Are we leaving too?" I nodded. I didn't need to speak. My shoes were already moving. We walked toward the exit, people parting like the Red Sea, some with shame in their eyes, some avoiding mine entirely. I had almost made it to the door when I heard it. "Rachel." The voice was old, weathered, familiar. I turned. Grandpa Norman stood frail but upright, his eyes shimmering under the soft lights. He took 2 cautious steps toward me. I stopped. Caleb squeezed my hand, unsure. "I should have stood up for you a long time ago," he said, his voice low but firm. There was no defense in his tone. No excuse. Just a simple, quiet truth. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. For once, I wasn't waiting to be defended, explained, or validated. That moment wasn't for him. It was for me. I gave a small nod. Gentle, respectful, final. Then I turned open the door and stepped into the evening air. The night was cool against my cheeks, still tingling from the heat of that ballroom. But I felt taller somehow, not because I'd been rescued. Because I'd stayed standing long enough for someone to notice I didn't need to be. I walked out without a word. But the silence that followed said everything. The doors of the reception hall closed behind us with a soft click. Caleb's small hand stayed tucked into mine as we made our way through the nearly empty parking lot. The stars were faint above the orange glow of the lamps. I didn't speak, and neither did he. There was nothing left to say. I drove home with both windows cracked open. The autumn air swept in and tangled gently in my hair. Caleb dozed off halfway through the ride, his head leaning against the window, tuxedo-wrinkled shoes untied. I looked at him once when we stopped at a red light and whispered, "You were brave tonight." He didn't stir, but I think he heard me. The next morning, the world had already changed. My phone buzzed non-stop. Calls, texts, notifications stacked on top of each other. I opened one, then two, then stopped counting. Someone had recorded Callum's speech. A guest, probably. The video had gone viral overnight. Over 50,000 views, hundreds of comments, thousands of shares. Headlines started popping up. Groom stops wedding to defend bride's sister. Not all heroes wear capes. Some wear tuxedos. The kindest groom in America. I didn't feel famous, I felt exposed. My inbox filled with messages from strangers, single moms, daughters who had been forgotten. People who knew what it felt like to be the quiet one. The one who didn't fight back because they'd been too tired for too long. A few distant cousins sent vague apologies, soft, slippery phrases like, "I didn't realize how bad it was," or "Hope you're okay now." Some even tried to say they had been uncomfortable with the speech, but didn't know how to respond. But the apology that mattered never came. Not from Madison, not from Donna. Madison went radio silent. Not a post, not a message. Her Instagram wedding photos were gone by Monday. She made a statement through a mutual friend, telling people it had all been a misunderstood joke, that people are just too sensitive these days. Donna, however, called once. She didn't ask if I was all right. She didn't mention Caleb. She only said one thing tight and sharp. "You've embarrassed this family." I held the phone to my ear for 5 full seconds after that. Then I hung up. No words. Just silence. A kind of final punctuation. In the following days, the buzz died down. People moved on, as they always do. Viral moments fade, but their ripples linger. At the grocery store, I noticed some familiar faces smile gently at me, like I was now someone worthy of acknowledgement. The barista at the cafe where I worked slipped an extra cookie into my son's treat bag. A mother at Caleb's school left a note in his backpack. "Your mom is amazing." But still no call. No letter, no apology. I thought I would care more. Then one evening, as we were washing dishes, Caleb looked up at me, his hands still sudsy, and asked, "Mom, are you sad that they didn't say sorry?" I turned off the faucet, looked at him, his eyes wide with honesty, the kind of eyes that hadn't learned to hide yet. "No," I said gently, drying my hands, "because I don't need an apology to know I was right." He nodded slowly, like he was filing that truth away for later. That was when it really clicked. I had spent years hoping for recognition, waiting for someone in that family to look at me and say, "You matter too." But now, standing in my small kitchen with the clinking of dishes and my son beside me, I realized I didn't need their permission anymore. Peace didn't come from their words. It came from my choice to stop needing them. That night I took a plain sheet of paper and a pen. I didn't pour my heart into it. I didn't rage or plead or explain. I just wrote, "I'm not your scapegoat anymore. Whatever happens next, it's not mine to carry." I folded it neatly and the next morning slipped it into a plain white envelope. On the way to drop Caleb off at school, I drove by Donna's house. I didn't get out of the car, just rolled down the window and left the envelope tucked at the edge of her mailbox. No name, no return address. She'd know. Later that day, Caleb and I went for a walk. The air was crisp, the sun peeking through scattered clouds. Leaves rustled beneath our feet, red and gold and brown. He reached up and took my hand again. No reason, no words. After a few minutes, he asked, "Do you think Callum's okay?" I smiled softly. I think he did the right thing, and sometimes doing the right thing is enough. Caleb nodded, then ran ahead to chase a squirrel. His laughter carried on the wind. I stood there for a moment, watching him, feeling the quiet of my own heart settle into something warm. Not triumphant, not loud, just right. No, I didn't win a wedding. I didn't win applause or closure or a redemption arc from the people who once wrote me off. But I won something better. I won a life that no longer required permission to be respected. A voice that no longer waits to be invited. And a son who now knows exactly what strength looks like. Not in anger or volume, but in grace, truth, and quiet dignity. That is the ending no one expected, and exactly the one I deserved. Sometimes the loudest act of strength is walking away without needing applause. Rachel's story reminds us dignity isn't something others give, it's something we claim. In a world that often rewards cruelty, disguised as humor, standing firm in your worth is a quiet form of rebellion. As someone who's faced silence where there should have been support, I felt every word of this journey. And maybe you did too. If this story moved you even just a little, take a second to honor your own resilience. Have you ever had to walk away to find peace? Share your story in the comments, like this video, if it spoke to you, and don't forget to subscribe. We share true stories that honor strength, dignity, and the power of quiet justice, because sometimes the most powerful revenge is rising without anger.